If you're earning well, but your finances still feel a bit scattered, this might explain why. After working with high earning Filipino professionals for more than a decade, I started noticing a pattern. Many of them were not careless. In fact, they were responsible. They had policies, they had investments, they had cash in different accounts. Some had properties or businesses. But when you looked at everything together, there was no clear direction. And for a long time, I kept asking myself, why does this happen? Because these are intelligent, disciplined people. People who know how to work hard and take responsibility. So the issue was not intelligence. It wasn't discipline. And very often, it wasn't income. The deeper issue was this: most high earners don't actually have a financial system. They have financial activity, but activity is not the same as structure. And until that changes, more income usually creates more complexity, not more clarity. Once you see that clearly, a lot of financial frustration starts to make sense. So in this video, let me walk you through 10 lessons I've learned after more than 10 years in financial planning work with high-earning Filipino professionals. Not as theories, but as patterns I've seen again and again. If this already sounds familiar, then this is worth looking at more carefully. Because very often, the answer is not to add another product, another account, or another piece of advice. The better next step is to have your situation properly diagnosed by someone who knows what to look for. Because your situation is personal, and it's very hard to see clearly when you're inside it. That's what we look at in a discovery call. The link is in the description. Now, the reason I say structure matters is because of something I eventually realized. Most capable professionals are not lacking effort. In fact, many are doing a lot. They're paying premiums, they're investing, they're saving when they can, they're trying to make responsible decisions. But effort without structure creates inconsistency. And when decisions are inconsistent, results become unclear. That's why you can be successful in your career and still feel financially foggy. Now, this is important because many people interpret financial fog as a personal weakness. They think, oh, maybe I'm not disciplined enough, or maybe I should know more, or maybe I just need to earn more. But after seeing this pattern many times, I don't think that's the right diagnosis. The issue is not that you're doing something wrong. The issue is that there may be no system holding everything together. And when there's no system, every financial decision becomes isolated. Insurance is separate, investing is separate, budgeting is separate, cash flow is separate. So even when each decision looks sensible on its own, the whole structure may still be misaligned. And that is where the frustration begins. So here are the 10 lessons. Lesson number 1: high income amplifies disorder. High income doesn't solve financial problems. It amplifies them. Now, at first glance, that sounds strange because most people assume that if income increases, then money problems should decrease. And yes, higher income gives you more room, more options, more capacity, more flexibility, but it also creates more decisions. What do you do with the extra cash? How much should you invest? Should you pay down debt or buy property, support your family, or upgrade your lifestyle? The more you earn, the more decisions you have to make. And if there's no structure guiding those decisions, then income simply gives disorder more room to spread. This is something I've seen repeatedly. A person's career grows faster than their financial structure. So from the outside, everything looks fine. The income is strong, the position is good, the family's comfortable. But underneath, the money flow is so messy. There is more movement, but not necessarily more direction. More accounts, but not necessarily more control. There are more products, but not necessarily more coherence. And this is why career success can hide financial disorder for years. Because income can cover inefficiency, but it cannot correct structure. And once you understand that income can amplify disorder, the next lesson becomes clearer. Lesson number 2: financial success is built on small decisions. Financial success is not one big decision. It is the accumulation of thousands of small decisions made correctly over time. Now, people usually look for the big move. You know, that right investment, the right property, the right business opportunity, the right timing. And yes, big decisions matter, but in real life, what I've seen is that financial progress is usually shaped by smaller decisions that repeat. How much do you save when income comes in, for example? How do you respond to bonuses? What do you do when markets fall? What do you do when a new product is offered to you? These decisions look small, but they compound. And because they compound, the real question becomes what system is guiding those decisions? Because if the system is clear, even ordinary decisions become powerful. But if the system is unclear, even intelligent decisions can conflict with each other. So the issue is not one decision. The issue is the decision environment. What is shaping your choices before you make them? That is where structure matters. Lesson number 3. People optimize before they structure. Now, this is where many high earners make a very understandable mistake. They try to optimize before they structure. They ask, what's the best investment? What's the best insurance? What's the best strategy? Those are not bad questions, but sometimes they're being asked too early. Because here's the problem. How do you optimize something that isn't structured properly yet? If cash flow is unclear, investing becomes unstable. If goals are unclear, product selection becomes random. If protection is inefficient, wealth building slows down quietly. So optimization becomes premature. It's like trying to move the interior design of a house before checking whether the foundation is aligned. It might look better, but the underlying issue remains. And this is one of the biggest structural misunderstandings I see with high earners. They don't need more financial activity, they need financial order. Because without order, optimization often becomes another layer of complexity. So let's pause here. A lot of financial frustration is not coming from lack of effort, it's coming from trying to improve something that was never properly built. And this is a useful diagnostic question. If your income doubled next year, would your finances become clearer? Or would the cracks just widen? Because if more income simply means more accounts, more premiums, more investments, more spending, and more decisions without direction, then the issue is not income. The issue is structure. So if structure is the issue, the next question is simple. What has to come first? That brings us to lesson 4. Sequence matters more than intensity. You don't fix everything at once. And this is where many busy professionals struggle. Because once they realize their finances need work, they try to improve everything simultaneously. Pay down debt, build reserves, increase investments, review insurance, plan for retirement, all at the same time. Now again, the intention is good, but the execution becomes scattered. There's a sequence to this. Some things need to come before others. If cash flow, for example, is unstable, then increasing investment contributions may not be sustainable. If your reserves are weak, market volatility becomes more emotionally difficult to handle. If your insurance protection is poorly structured, one major event can interrupt years of wealth building. Now, this doesn't mean everyone follows the exact same sequence. That would be too simplistic. But it does mean there must be a deliberate order. Because without sequence, your effort will spread out too thinly. And when effort spreads too thin, people will feel busy with their finances but not necessarily in control. That is a very different thing. Lesson 5. Budgeting is the operating system. Sequence alone is not enough. Because even if you know what matters first, your money still needs a way to move properly every month. That brings us to budgeting. And this is one I've come to appreciate more and more over time. You see, your budget is not just a tool. It is the operating system that powers everything. Now, I know budgeting sounds basic, and for high earners, it can even feel too basic. Because when income is strong, the thinking is often, I don't need to budget tightly, or I'm not living paycheck to paycheck anyway, and I just need to save and invest more. But this is where the misunderstanding happens. Budgeting is not just about limiting spending, it's about directing money. It tells your money where to go before life absorbs it. And for high earners, the real difficulty is often not budgeting in the simple sense. The real difficulty is account management. Where does your income land? Which account funds lifestyle or goals or investing and reserves? Because what usually happens in real life is this: money comes in, then it moves. Some goes to expenses, some goes to family support, some goes to premiums, some goes to investments, some stays idle. And because the flow is not directed clearly, people are forced to manage money manually every month. That creates decision fatigue. And when you're busy, decision fatigue eventually becomes inconsistency. So the budget is not just a spreadsheet, it is a control system. The more your structure can handle automatically, the less your discipline has to carry manually. That is the real value. Lesson number 6: protection mistakes create drag. Once cash flow has structure, the next thing I usually look at is protection. Because protection can either support the plan or quietly weigh it down. Many high earners accumulate insurance policies over time. Some were bought early in their career, some were added after marriage, children, or income growth. And again, the intention is usually responsible. They want to protect their family, they want to prepare, they want to do the right thing. But over time, the protection portfolio can become messy. And when that happens, the right question is not simply, do I have insurance? The better question is, what am I getting for what I'm paying? Because protection is not just about having policies, it's about efficiency. Is the coverage aligned with the actual risk? Is the cost reasonable for the protection received? Is too much cash flow being absorbed by policies that no longer fit the bigger plan? Now, to be clear, this is not about attacking products or institutions, okay? The issue is structure. A product can be useful in one context, but inefficient in another. That is why evaluation matters. Because a messy insurance portfolio doesn't just protect poorly, it quietly drags you down. And that drag compounds. Not loudly, quietly. That is why protection needs to be designed, not merely accumulated. Lesson number 7: the 94% rule. Once protection is no longer creating unnecessary drag, investing becomes much cleaner to evaluate. And this is where the 94% rule of investing comes in. Now, I use this as a principle, not as a universal mathematical guarantee. The point is simple. A large part of your investing outcome comes from behavior and method, not from picking the best investment. Most people focus on what to invest in: which fund, which stock, which property, which market. And again, those questions matter, but what I've seen in real advisory work is that the bigger drivers are often more basic. Like, how consistently do you save? How much of your income actually becomes investable capital? Do you have a method? Do you stay invested when conditions are uncomfortable? Because investing is not close your eyes and hope for the best. No, it requires method. But the method has to sit on top of savings discipline. Because if savings are inconsistent, investing becomes inconsistent. If investing is inconsistent, compounding becomes weaker. So many people spend a lot of energy and time searching for the best investment when the more important question is, do I have a repeatable way to convert income into assets? That question is less exciting, but it is more powerful. Because high income doesn't automatically become wealth. It has to be converted. And the conversion process depends on structure, behavior, and method. So if this pattern fits you, pause before adding more financial activity. Because more activity will not fix a weak structure. The better step is to work with a professional to assess what's already there, how it fits together, and where the gaps are. That's what we look at in a discovery call. The link is in the description below. Lesson number 8. Investment method governs decisions under pressure. Now, one reason structure matters so much when investing is that financial decisions are not made only in calm decisions, they're also made under pressure. And this is where method becomes important. A method tells you what to do when conditions change. When income is stable, markets are positive, and expenses are predictable, decisions feel easier. But what happens when those conditions change? What happens, for example, when markets fall? Or when income becomes uncertain? What happens when a family obligation appears? This is where many people improvise. And improvisation is expensive. Not always immediately, but over time. Because when there's no method, emotion often starts to make the decision. News starts guiding the decision. Social media starts guiding your decision. A friend's advice starts guiding the decision. Fear and excitement start guiding the decision. A clear method doesn't remove uncertainty, but it gives you a way to respond to uncertainty. That's the difference. The goal is not to predict everything, but it is to avoid making every decision from scratch. Because if every decision starts from zero, then your financial life becomes too dependent on your mood, on timing, and mental bandwidth. And busy professionals like you have limited bandwidth. That is why method matters. It protects decision quality when conditions are not ideal. Lesson number 9, the flower garden principle. To explain investing in a simpler way, I often think about it like a garden. Managing money is a little bit like tending a garden. If you're tending a flower garden, what do? You give flowers ample time to grow. You expose them to conditions that are ideal for growth. And whenever there are things that hinder growth, like pests or weeds, you remove them early. That sounds obvious. But in investing and financial decision making, many people do the opposite. They allow the pests to stay, and they cut the flowers too early, meaning they hold on to poor decisions too long and they interrupt good strategies too soon. Now, this is interesting because the problem is not always technical, it's behavioral. People often know intellectually that compounding takes time, but when emotions enter, they reverse the principle. They protect the wrong things and they disturb the right things. So the question becomes, what in your financial life should be removed? And what should be allowed to grow? That question is simple, but it is not always easy to answer. Because in real life, the pests are not always obvious. Sometimes they look responsible, sometimes they look familiar, sometimes they were useful before but no longer fit today. And the flowers are not always exciting. Sometimes they look boring, sometimes they require patience. That's why financial planning is not just about selecting tools. It's about judgment, knowing what to remove, knowing what to keep, knowing what to simplify, and knowing what to leave alone. And when you apply judgment long enough, you start to notice something. The best structures usually become simpler over time. And that brings us to the final lesson, lesson number 10. Simplicity wins. Now, this is something I appreciate more and more the longer I do this work. Complexity looks intelligent, but it often breaks under pressure. A plan can look impressive on paper, many accounts, many policies, many investments, many moving parts. But if the person cannot execute it consistently, that plan isn't strong. It's fragile. Because the best financial structure is not the one that looks the most sophisticated. It's the one that can actually be followed, especially by a busy professional with real responsibilities, career responsibilities, family responsibilities, leadership responsibilities, life responsibilities. So, simplicity is not a lack of sophistication. Simplicity, rather, is the endpoint of design. It means the unnecessary parts have been removed. The sequence is clear. The roles are clear. The priorities are clear. The next decision is easier because the structure has already done some of the thinking for you. That's what good design does. It reduces friction. And in financial life, reducing friction matters because consistency is already hard enough. You don't want a structure that requires constant heroic discipline. You want a structure that supports wise action even when life gets busy. That's when money starts to feel more manageable. Not because life becomes perfectly simple, but because the system stops adding unnecessary complexity. Now, when you put all these lessons together, a pattern becomes very clear. This is why capable people stay stuck for years. Not because they're careless or irresponsible or they lack ambition, but because intelligence without structure breaks under complexity. And the more successful you become, the more complexity you have to carry. More income, More decisions, more obligations, more people depending on you. And at a certain point, effort is no longer enough. You can't just work harder at managing money. You have to redesign how money is being managed. That is the identity shift you need to make. Serious professionals don't optimize symptoms, they redesign systems. Because financial mastery is not about doing more, it's about making better decisions inside a better structure. And that structure protects not just you, but also the people who depend on your stability. So let's bring this together. After more than 10 years in this work, if I had to compress this lesson, it would be this: financial success is not one big decision. It is the cumulative effect of small decisions made consistently over a long period of time. But those decisions only improve when a clear structure is guiding them. That is why high income alone is not enough. Because income gives you capacity, but structure gives that capacity direction. Without structure, more income can become more movement, more leakage, more drag, more complexity, and less coherence. But with structure, the same income can become more intentional, more directed, more aligned, more capable of serving what matters to you. This is the real shift from financial fog to money mastery. You stop asking only, what should I buy? But you start asking, what system should guide my decisions? Because once that question changes, the whole conversation changes. Budgeting becomes direction. Insurance becomes protection design. Investing becomes a method for converting income into long-term assets. Simplicity becomes evidence of refined design. And effort is no longer scattered, it becomes guided. So, if your finances feel unclear even though you earn well, don't immediately assume the answer is more income, more products, or more information. Look first at the structure, because very often that is where the real issue is. High earners don't need more effort, they need structure. And once the structure is clear, wise action becomes much easier to sustain. If you're a serious professional who wants to evaluate this properly, the next step is to book a discovery call with us. Because understanding the principle is useful, but applying it across your actual financial life is the real work. In that call, we'll assess where your current structure is clear, where it's fragmented, and where it may need guided application. The link is in the description below. I'm Mon Casas, founder of Beacon Wealth Advisory. We help high-earning Filipino professionals move from financial fog to money mastery through clear thinking, wise action, and a financial structure they can actually execute. I'll see you in the next video.